Hello to all you beautiful people of the internet. Welcome to another character profile, and this time we are looking at the minor characters of Woodbury. Sorry about that cough. I just had a chocolate muffin. Actually, I had 3 chocolate muffins. They were delicious. So the first one I'm going to be looking at is Eugene Cooney. Cooney is revealed in the books. It's not revealed in the comics. He's just known as Eugene. He is male. His hair color is unknown, but he is bald. His age is from early to mid-40s. Before the apocalypse, we don't know what his life was, but after the apocalypse, he was a guard for Woodbury and a Woodbury arena fighter. So we don't know much about his life before, but he possibly lived at Woodbury, and then at time became a guard. I'm not going to read you what his life was in the novels. If you want to know, check it out for yourself. In the volume The Best Defense, Eugene is first seen fighting Harold in the Woodbury arena, where he gets his teeth knocked out when Harold hits him with a crowbar. In the volume This Sorrowful Life, enraged, Eugene later confronts Harold in Dr. Stevens' office, protesting that the fights are meant to be staged, but Harold knocked out his teeth. Though Harold tries to get him to calm down, Eugene ultimately stabs him in the neck. Due to the death of Harold, the governor finds himself a fighter short, so he makes a deal with Michonne, whom is brutally ing. If she fights Eugene, he will let her rest for a week. The governor allows Michonne to use her sword since the crowbar since the crowd won't like seeing a man beat up a woman. But he tells her that she isn't allowed to kill Eugene. When the match starts, Michonne kicks Eugene in the groin and immediately decapitates him, horrifying the crowd and enraging the governor. So we don't know if he was put down or if the governor kept him as like a head in that tank. So that was Eugene Cooney. Let me know what you thought of the character, and if you had control over his fate, what would you do with it? Moving on. Next, we are looking at Bruce Cooper. Cooper is his middle name, and it's revealed in the novels. Again, I'm not going to read you anything from the novels. You're going to have to look that up yourself. He is male. His hair is black, but he is balding. He is mid to late 30s. Before the apocalypse, he was a gas station clerk, and after the apocalypse, he was a bodyguard for the governor and a head guard for Woodbury. So little is known about Bruce before the apocalypse, but he ran a gas station with his dad and had a girlfriend, Shauna. He would lose track of time as he had car intimacy with her in a 427 Camaro with overhead shafts and hemispherical combustion chambers, which they used to go along at its suite, making him remember happy in a vaguely melancholy way later. He possibly lived in Woodbury as well, you know. So in the volume The Best Defense, when Rick Grimes, Michonne Hawthorne, and Glenn Rhee arrive at Woodbury, Bruce and Gabe accompany the governor as his bodyguards. When the group are led above the arena, Bruce is ordered to close the door by them. Following the governor's declaration of feeding strangers to the biters, Bruce takes position behind Michonne and cautiously watches her. Shortly after, he is ordered to pin Rick's head to the table and assists in the forced amputation of his right hand. Michonne, in retaliation, leaps onto the governor and bites his ear off, or bites his left ear. Bruce quickly puts her down, but he manages to tear a part of his ear. She manages to tear a part of his ear off with his teeth. Yeah, there you go. Bruce awaits orders to kill her immediately, but is reprimanded by the governor, who has other far worse plans for her. Bruce and Gabe carry Rick's limp body to the infirmary to be treated by Dr. Stevens. Shortly after, Bruce gets the governor and tells him that Michonne has calmed down a bit. They head to a cell where he where her arms are tied and she's talking to herself. The pair wait for a minute outside and think she's crazy. Philip orders Bruce to take her pants off and tie her legs to opposite ends of the wall, which he does without question. After he's done, he closes the door on his way out and gives them some privacy while standing guard outside the door. While the governor, Michonne, Bruce stands guard at the door for ages, thinking about his girlfriend Shauna and how long they would do it for. He becomes slightly concerned about what Philip is doing to the girl, hoping that at least this gets some information out of her, and it isn't just for nothing. His legs really ache. After hours of torture, the governor finally finishes and is let out by Bruce. Glenn is eventually moved into the cell next door to Michonne's by Gabe. The governor asks Bruce if she's ready, which she's clearly not, so Bruce ups the cell door again for the governor's round 2. The next morning, Philip radios Bruce to meet him behind the racetracks. Bruce asks the governor if he's asking the girl any questions during her torture, but Philip says he will eventually and asks for Glenn to be moved next door. Bruce braces himself as he opens up Michonne's cell door when the governor finishes his third session with her. She is barely alive, but Bruce can tell there is a burning rage behind her eyes, waiting to be unleashed. The governor knows that she isn't going to say anything. Bruce asks if they should just separate them all and wait for them to break from isolation, because that's what they do in prisons. Philip tells him this isn't a prison and then stops himself. He remembers Gabe saying something about their riot gear suits having no police markings, as if they were from a prison. He tells Bruce to go and get Gabe, then meets him by the infirmary. Gabe and Bruce wait outside the infirmary for a moment while Dr. Stevens tells Rick about the governor's horrific leadership. They enter and Bruce points his gun at Rick. Philip lies about letting Glenn go after he revealed the location of the prison to get a reaction from Rick. After leaving, the governor believes their lie worked, and Rick's reaction told them everything they needed to know, and it's only a matter of time before they figure out where exactly it is. In the volume of The Sorrowful Life, at exactly 3:55 p.m., I know it's crazy, Bruce tells the governor about Harold Abernethy's murder by Eugene Cooney. The governor says they shouldn't make a big deal about it and instead tells the townspeople that Harold died from internal injuries sustained from the fight because he was a hero who gave it his all, which makes the residents further believe the fights are actually real. Bruce and Philip visit Michonne's cell while Philip offers her a week of rest, food, and maybe a chair or a bed in exchange for replacing Harold in the arena fight. Bruce opens the cell door and presents her katana, which she doesn't take her eyes off of. Philip gives her 20 minutes to think about it. He and Gabe later accompany the governor to the disastrous fight, where Michonne uses her sword to immediately decapitate Eugene and kill all the captive biters. Gabe and Bruce are ordered to bring her in immediately as the two run onto the field and tackle her to the ground as the crows incessantly jeers. Shortly after Bruce and Gabe successfully restrain Michonne back to her cell after she puts up a fight, the governor, in a rage, commands her to open the door so he could kill her, but reluctantly stops himself and decides to think it over. After Martinez knocks out Gabe and helps Rick, Glenn, Michonne, Stevens, and Alice escape, Gabe wakes up and finds Bruce to tell him they've all gone. The pair urgently rush to the governor's apartment to tell him the news, where they find the door barricaded. Michonne frees Penny as a distraction, and Bruce kicks the door open as she escapes. Jameson restrains Penny from biting Bruce, and the men gaze, horrified, upon the governor's mutilated body and wonder if he's dead. In the volume The Calm Before, sorry, my brain short-circuited, following the explosion at the National Guard station near Woodbury, Bruce and 3 Woodbury guards drive out to investigate and run into the prison group at the local Walmart. When Glenn reveals himself, Bruce immediately recognizes him and shoots him in the chest. The bullets luckily deflect off his riot gear armor. Maggie Green screams and reveals the other hidden survivors' positions, but Andrea acts quickly and shoots Bruce through the neck with her rifle, mortally wounding him. Michonne then kills the other two guards, and Sam is ordered to surrender. He freaks out over the death of his fellow guard and is promptly shot too. In the volume Made to Suffer, during a flashback in issue 143, Bruce and Gabe are unsure whether or not the governor is still alive. Penny goes for Bruce and he goes to shoot her when the governor moans and uses all of his strength to tell him not to hurt his daughter. They realize that Philip requires some serious medical help, but Alice and Stevens are absent. Bruce thinks quick and orders Gabe to lock the doors before racing outside to the town drunk and former army medic Bob Stuckey, who used to fight in Afghanistan. Bruce drags him upstairs and forces him to help, but Bob vomits at the sight of the governor's mutilated and disfigured body. Bruce presses on, and Bob quickly sobers up, agreeing to help and telling them which supplies he's going to need. A while later, after Philip has recovered, Bruce informs him that Martinez has been found dead and reanimated. The governor decides it's finally time to reveal himself to the public. Bruce and Gabe trying to gather information about any local prisons from the townsfolk. Bruce tells Philip that the closest bit of information they got was one guy believing there to be a prison off of McAllister Lane, which is a long road they haven't been able to fully search, and the guy isn't sure about it. Gabe informs the governor about the National Guard station's explosion, and Bruce taking a group out to investigate. He heard heavy gunfire a few minutes later, so Philip and Gabe go to investigate along with Rudy and Wes. The group discovers 3 corpses at the Walmart, and Bruce, barely alive, choking on his own blood. He tells Philip that the prison survivors did this and Glenn, the bored one, came back. Bruce goes quietly and Philip shoots him in the head to prevent reanimation. Bruce's death saddens and enrages the governor, making him more vengeful than ever. So that was Bruce Cooper. That was a long one, Jesus. But moving on. And lastly, we're going to be looking at Bob Stuckey. I love saying Stuckey like that, I apologise. He is male, his hair is grey, he is aged 50. Before the apocalypse, he was a former corpsman for the US Marines, a former battlefield ambulance driver, and a truck driver. And then after the apocalypse, he became a doctor. So before the apocalypse, be prepared, it's a very long backstory. In Vicksburg, Mississippi, originally from Vicksburg, Bob was born on August 9th, 1953, grew up dirt poor, and his deeply religious parents abused him as a kid. His mother Dolores used to call him Bobby and would use the word grace to tell him that people can find grace among misery because God made us in his image. In Slidell, Louisiana, during his adolescence, he and his family moved to Slidell. In his teenage years his libido increased, driving him horny as usual, having wet dreams and frequenting the bottoms-up gentleman's club. I have no idea what a gentleman's club is. Just me. Yeah, wow. As an adult, he developed an abiding hatred for evangelists that coloured his every thought. But he kept up his faith in Christianity as his conception of who God is and how busy he must be. He married Brenda at some point, but they later tried to divorce. However, it was going sour and had a lot to do with leading him to sign up for the US Marine Corps. In San Antonio, Texas, he joined the army and received a few months of training as a hospital corpsman in Fort Sam Houston during boot camp, barely making it out due to his drinking. He learned brief instructions on how to be a medic, such as basic first aid, a little CPR, and the rudiments of trauma care, but not professionally skilled. Despite that, he was well versed in basal chemistry and pharmacology, knowing several scientific knowledge. In Kuwait, by August 2nd, 1990, at age 36, he was deployed in the First Gulf War, codenamed Operation Desert Shield, for 2 weeks. As Hospital Corpsman First Class, Bob Stuckey served a single tour with the 68 Alpha Company as a glorified ambulance, and at least once armoured personal carrier (APC) driver and a battlefield medic. He ran the ambulance units up and down Highway 8 between Baghdad and Kuwait City. His medic job was a nickel's worth, and it didn't heal any soldiers and only kept wounded victims breathing or the circulatory system intact until they could move to a mobile surgical unit. He was one of the older enlisted men at war and became somewhat of a Dutch uncle to the youngsters around him. He had a knack for keeping the boys entertained with lousy jokes and non-regulation sips from his ever-present flask of Jim Beam. He also had a soft heart. The grunts loved him for that, and he died a little every time he lost a Marine. During his service, he saw a soldier choose the battlefront over a behind-the-line job to avoid the tight quarters of the Quonset Hut office. Some Delta Force members who used to patrol the streets of Kuwait City teased him by pushing him around and pulling rank on him all the time they encountered him. Still, he was secretly glad and relieved they were there. He witnessed many horrors through the war: shrapnel-riddled bodies he patched, a local prostitute disguised insurgent gal who committed via IED at his APC, etc. He also started to suffer impotence after being injured by a mortar blast. He got an honourable discharge and was shipped back to the world 1 week after his 37th birthday. He lost his 111 comrades in battle, including Bobby McCallum. In Smyrna, Georgia, I think it's known as Smyrna, after August 16th, 1990, he returned to his home and continued to live with his wife Brenda. He lived in a trailer in a mobile home park outside of Smyrna, which was not a bad life for him. He worked as a truck driver, owning a Rust Bucket International Harvester truck. In his daily routine, he used pomade to grease his dark hair back over his weathered head in a vintage way. He had to deal with PTSD after the combat experiences, making him medicate with a half quart of whiskey a day, which eventually sent him into alcoholism. Along with boozing, he had a toxic lifestyle with the late nights, cigarettes, and unhealthy diets: red-eye gravy, grits dripping with butter, bacon grease, fried chicken, and banana cream pie. His doctor in Augusta had warned him about heart attacks for decades, but he didn't listen carefully. Since 1992, he has stopped having relations with Brenda and has not had intercourse with the woman. Decades of the drink have put the kibosh on his maleness. I'm not going to read the novels. You can read that story for yourself. In the Free Comic Book Day special, I believe this is the Governor's one, Bob Stuckey is seen waving at Megan Lafferty as they pass each other in the street. Yes, and that's considered canon. In the volume The Best Defence, Bob can be seen sitting outside the governor's apartment in the street. Brian tells him to go and get something to eat because they removed the barter system. Bob reluctantly agrees, and Brian tells him that he worries about him. In the volume This Sorrowful Life, Bob can be seen sitting outside the governor's apartment just before Michonne breaks in to confront him. Bob is the only one who hears the screams of torture but thinks nothing of it. And in the volume Made to Suffer, in issue 43, Bruce and Gabe find the governor barely alive in his apartment. After Dr. Stevens and Alice had escaped, Bruce goes down to fetch Bob so he can save the governor's life. Bob claims he can't do it because he wasn't an army medic for long, but Bob forces him to try. Bruce forces him to try, sorry. Bob is repulsed by the sight of the governor's mangled body, but snaps out of it and manages to save his life, much to the governor's own disbelief. And yeah, that is it for the minor characters of Woodbury. If you had control of the fates of these characters, let me know how you would write them. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you hear and see, please like and subscribe. Great. I'm sorry the previous one that I didn't get much pictures. I didn't have enough time. But I hope you all at least enjoyed it. Have a good day.